Okay, welcome everybody. Let's get started. It's that clock is not working, so if you see me 5 minutes before before 10:30 waving my hand, that's because I'm not trying to act crazy. I'm trying to tell our guests that we have 5 minutes left. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker or our guest today, Dr. Pierre Coulombe, who is the chair of Cell and Developmental Biology, also my home department. So it's exciting to have my chair here. He'll be interviewed by Jay Von Hagen, who many of you know, who has been in the forefront of postdoc issues at Michigan Medicine and Michigan in general, and was the co-president or president for the UMPDA up until a few months ago. And it was going to be Jay and Pierre's show, so I'm going to sit here and take some notes. And Jay at some point will turn to the audience and have you guys chime into the questions. So thank you both of you for being here and spending an hour with us. So, let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thanks again everybody for coming, and thank you Pierre for taking the time. I know most of the audience are postdocs, and as this is sort of a tenure track faculty style career chat, I assume that most of you are interested in that sort of career. So I think that it's helpful for those of us that are interested in that type of career to hear just sort of what the journey and process of a lot of those that sort of preceded us was like. So I was going to allow you to, or ask you to sort of give us a little bit of personal background in terms of how you got where you are today, including what it was like in terms of your job search from postdoc.
My own?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, good morning everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm Canadian. I came to this country to complete my training as a postdoctoral fellow and never left. So I think the United States is a really wonderful environment in which to do science. So I was recruited as an assistant professor a long time ago at Johns Hopkins University, and I was on faculty there for 25 years. The last 8.5 of these years, I was department chair at Hopkins of a basic science department, and I recruited or facilitated the recruitment of 7 faculty. And a little over 2 years ago, I came here to chair Cell and Developmental Biology at the University of Michigan with a very exciting mandate to help lead the department at a time where the school is making a massive investment in biomedical research. So that made the mandate, and there were a number of personal reasons for the move as well, very exciting. So we recruited 2 faculty a year and a half ago, and we're in the midst of a search right now for faculty members. So recruiting faculty, I would say, is one of the aspects of the chair position that makes it the most rewarding. Working with young people, junior colleagues, whether they're grad students, postdocs, or junior faculty, is probably the most rewarding aspect of being the chair. So how should we go about discussing how we recruit talented faculty?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things is sort of getting an overview of how that process works from a chair's perspective in terms of who makes the decision, how many hires you get, and sort of how does the university administrative structure work in terms of creating an environment where we're searching for faculty, such that I think those of us that are interested in that can perspective.
Yeah,
and by the way, just before you start, if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand and we'll just do this more discussion stuff.
So the mandate that I received when I was recruited to be chair of Cell and Developmental Biology is to grow the department in ways that would make it a nationally visible entity and thus contribute to the success of the school as a whole. So as part of my recruitment, the department was extended resources, including money, that were to be devoted to this general mandate. There were no number of positions or specifics that were given at the time. And then how does one go about deciding what you're going to do? So the first thing we did is we had a retreat with our faculty. where we spent a day and a half, discussing where we would like the department to go. And of course, I think one of the best ways to grow a department and the best way to remain innovative and successful is to create circumstances where younger scientists at every level, including faculty, can join the team. And so, how then do you decide what areas that you're going to favor? So, nobody has a crystal ball. So there's a few practical elements that go into this thinking process and decision-making process. One of them is that our department is about cell and developmental biology. Already there it sort of limits the spectrum of possibilities. So that's our responsibility to the community, is to make sure that when it comes to cell and developmental biology, the rest of the institution can rely on a very strong academic research-oriented unit. Okay. So then how do you decide what's the future of cell and developmental biology? Well, you can to a point you can guess the future. Like, for instance, I can share with you that personally I think that single-cell biology is already very, very important. So that's one of the examples of things that we've discussed. But beyond that, the mere notion of conducting a search where you're putting an ad out and you're calling for people to show an interest in potentially joining you, that's where you learn a lot about the future. Because a lot of the applications that are coming to you are relating current work that's unpublished and ideas about future directions. That gives you, if you have a pool of 200, 250, 300 people applying for the job, you're looking for what are the trends in that pool. So I think that a combination of a sort of semi-direction in terms of where you would like to go, but the intelligence of letting the sort of the future that's cooking right now, guide you is a good strategy.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah.
So you're saying if there's an application that goes against the trend and is very different, that's a negative?
No. I'm not sure how, that's not what I meant.
Okay.
So I think that I would say that it's, so what is excellence? The concept of excellence is something that I like to talk about. I increasingly hear that one has to be very careful about sort of throwing that word out there. The way I define excellence is that it's innovation that has a future. Because being innovative is not that difficult. Good ideas are a dime a dozen. But those ideas that will translate into a sustainable research direction that will prove transformative for biomedical research and biology, that's excellence. That's the way I define excellence, and those are the people that I try to recruit in the department. One of the side reasons why I'm a department chair, other than the fact that I like to be involved in facilitating, sort of young ones coming to the fore, is that it never fails. If the environment in which you operate is really strong, you're better. So I've been at Johns Hopkins University, which is an outstanding institution. I'm now at University of Michigan, also an outstanding institution. And the microenvironment that I'm in make me better than I really am. That's the whole idea. So when we recruit, I don't want to recruit people who are doing skin biology. I don't want to recruit people who do cancer biology. I don't want to recruit people who do what I do as a researcher. But I do want to have people who are going to cause me to think differently about my problem. Yeah.
That makes sense. So could you relate that to the trends and application? That's what I'm not understanding.
So when you sort of, right now we have a search, it is a rather focused search for developmental biologists, but it's an open rank search, at all levels. We're potentially interested in recruiting a more senior element and a junior element on faculty. And we have more than 200 applications. I would say that half of those are quite strong. And I would say that a quarter of those are exceptional. So that gives you a glimpse into the future, because these are the people who are going to be sort of charting the course of developmental biology going forward. So it does not give you 10 years, but it gives you 5 years. 5 years, it's like as close a crystal ball as you can come to. I don't have that ball. I can't, it's not my area. But through these applications and convergence that you see across, what are people thinking about? How are they thinking about it? And so forth. You get a better glimpse of the future that way. And to me, it's very important to let these forces play out. I want to pay attention to that, because to me, that's the best way to come to the future as I can. I mean, to have a sense about it. Does that help?
How does knowing that future inform your decision of who to send interviews to? Who you're choosing as a...
Well, I mean, it's more complicated than so a glimpse into the future tells you about, you know, sort of what are going to be areas where people are going to want to spend energy and so forth. But then beyond that, then the matter becomes who in your pool is best suited to help you get there. And that's a different issue. Then we can talk about what goes into a very strong application. When I get an application, what am I looking for?
I think that's probably a nice transition to a question that we got on the RSVPs, which was how does the department, or how do you as a chair actually define growth in terms of the forward direction of that department? In terms of, are we talking about number of trainees, research dollars, papers, training quality? How do you sort of prioritize those and then make informed hires to facilitate those metrics?
The way we hire at any level is not driven by any metric. It's driven by biology. Who do we want to be as a collective of biologists? So we try to create very attractive circumstances for people to come and to grow and be who they want to be. At times it's a short period, you know, it's like 5 years PhD, 5 years postdoc. At times the hope is that it's going to be a longer tenure, you know, like if you recruit on the faculty, you'd like them to be lifers, you know. But we don't grow, I'm not sure, maybe I misunderstood, but we don't grow driven by metrics. We grow by the prospect of being able to continue doing exciting biology, and as a consequence of this, to have a set of circumstances that are very, very attractive for the best minds to come. So, I'm not sure. Yeah, Cosmo.
So like, I don't know how to formulate this very well, but like, let's take this single cell example. Let's say someone has like a postdoc that's trying to be hired for a faculty position. They have a really outstanding track record of production, but they don't do anything with single cell, but they say that they want to because a lot of people here do single cell. Would that be like a more attractive candidate than, say, someone that already does single cell work and is coming there?
No, I mean, I think that it really, you know, through the application, you see the process of, okay, who is that person professionally? What has been their journey? What has been the record during that journey? And where do they think they're going, right? And in terms of, it does not have to align with the preconceived notion of where one would take the department. That is the point that I'm trying to drive here, is that we look at individuals and we look at the way they peek into the future, and then we make a decision as to whether this fits well given where we want to go. But it's not quite well scripted. We let the forces, the forces play out. So to try and answer your question more directly, I mean, I've facilitated the hire, I should say, of a faculty at Hopkins a person who had been a postdoc at NIH, and the person proposed something that was completely different than what might have been our notion of where to go. And not only that, but that person proposed to do things that were dramatically different than what they had been associated with at either the PhD or postdoctoral level. And that person got the interview, and that person convinced us that it would work out. And that was a compelling argument. It was an exciting program. There was a lot of enthusiasm, and we just decided to go for it, and it's working out. I mean, that person is being very successful on faculty over there. So, there's no one way to do it, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that this helps with your question. Yeah.
So when you talk about creating an attractive environment, what does that mean in terms of from the chair's perspective and an environmental perspective?
Well, that means a place where anyone who wants to contribute feels welcome. And so more specifically, it's, we're all on a continuum to become the professional that we want to be and the person we aim to be. I'm still learning. I still, I don't like, I'm still in training. I'm not done. As a scientist, as a mentor, as a person, I'm still growing. And to me, being with people who are different than me makes it very exciting and inspiring to try and get to, and it changes who I want to be now is not the same as who I wanted to be 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I wanted to be a famous scientist. That was the job. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be a famous scientist. Over time, my views on this have gotten a bit more refined, and maybe I got a dose of reality as well with what's my real potential. But sort of so it's building an environment where people who are like-minded and there's sort of a gross alignment in terms of objectives. This is about research and discovery. So that talented people are going to come together and gel for a while and see what shakes out of this.
Okay. I think, so you said something interesting there about creating an environment that feels welcome, and we're entering an era in STEM and in academia where feeling welcome is not limited to science, right? Where we have to build a more equitable and diverse workforce in STEM. So from the chair's perspective in terms of bringing new faculty on, how do you specifically incorporate elements that permit an environment that really values professionalism and anti-harassment and diversity in terms of a working environment?
Well, I think that I'm not sure that I have much to contribute to that question. I mean, it's not really a matter of, as the chair, I helped set the tone. But it's what you do as a person that's most important. So, what's my own approach to this? I try to know everybody in the department by first name. I want to know what they're here for, what they're looking for, and I try to keep in touch with what they do. And I try to, when they need help and I can make a difference, I try to make a difference. But if everybody sort of approaches this that way, I think that we can achieve the kind of environment that is conducive to success. Now, how do you cater specifically to diversity? I think that's complicated, but I think you have to go in with an open mind. You have to go in with the understanding that diversity at various levels, including human beings, is a source, great potential source of strength, and you just have to make sure that you are semi-directive in how you recruit in that way, but otherwise at all times very welcoming of diverse viewpoints and diverse backgrounds and so forth.
So, talking about recruiting, I know my Department of Human Genetics, the chair is also trying to recruit new faculties.
Tony.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a postdoc. Hopefully in the future, I'll hope myself in market searching for a faculty position. So, I have this question. I've seen Tony, trying to recruit, and also myself trying to go for it. I have this question: can I trust a sort of a future chair actually will judge my resume actually as the contents it is not some sort of something I didn't do, or like approaching, try to have a small conversation with the future chair in terms of finding a job. Can you comment on that?
No, sure. So I think I understand what you're asking about. I'm gonna try and answer it, and if I don't, then you tell me. But what I think it would be an excellent idea for you to sort of get the input from your current newly appointed chair, Tony, in terms of what he sees in your record, what he sees in your applications, how he. But I think you should go beyond that. You should ask other people, and you should step out of your comfort zone and reach out to people. You can pick out people you want to be. I'd like to be like that particular faculty. Reach out to them and ask, can I have half an hour of your time? I'm at a critical transition point in my career. I'm trying to collect advice in terms of how, because nobody is going to tell you no, and I'm not going to do that for you, And so when I was at that time, at your time, I was at the University of Chicago, and I went to see a couple of senior people, but I also went to see a couple of newly appointed assistant professors who I was really impressed with. Different styles, different types of individuals, and then I was looking for what might be missing. And so I was looking for hints. So a comfort of, okay, I'm doing this, it's good. Oh, I've not thought about that. So, just reach out. And don't limit this to Tony.
Yeah, so the reaching out part is the part that sometimes it's a little intimidating for a postdoc to go approach a future chair, and you are afraid of something you might say wrong that may potentially put your not favorable position. Is that something we should be worried about, or
no? This is beautiful. This is welcome to my life. I've never been comfortable, but think about it that way. I presume you have a PhD. You're a doctor, right? You're a doctor of philosophy. So welcome to the rest of your life. It never is comfortable. Should not be. You gotta live close to that edge, where basically if you can't do this for yourself now, are you going to be successful as a professional going forward? So, it is hard, no question, but you owe it to yourself to try.
Thanks.
Because the rest of the career that you're sort of aiming for, very little of it is going to be easy. And I'm very fond of saying that to students who are thinking about careers. There is no career worth having with a PhD degree that's easy. But they're all exciting. But it's not going to be easy. It's not easier to be this type of faculty at a research-intensive institution than it is to be a faculty at a teaching-intensive institution. It's not easy to be in a biotech sector kind of job. It's not easy to be effective in science policy. So, getting a PhD was the beginning of my life. But I mean, also it's the beginning of sort of always trying to live up to what it means to have a doctor of philosophy.
So to sort of take a step backward, but jump off of your question, Isaac. I think we've done this before in this faculty corner, but I think it would still be helpful to talk about it again in terms of, could you walk us through the recruitment and hiring and interview process for postdoc and tenure track faculty?
So so the application stage is very, very important. So we are looking for people who have been successful twice. And if you've been successful twice, chances are that you're going to continue to be successful. So as both a PhD student and a postdoc, you have come into a problem and you have made a difference. You have been successful. Are we looking for cell science and nature papers? No. We're looking for great biology. Some great biology gets published in Cell Science and Nature, but there's a lot of great biology that gets published in other journals. So we're looking for difference makers, people who've done it twice on problems that are important, and they've prevailed in showing that they can, there has to be a publication record. Publication records is the currency by which we thrive. We like to see demonstration of the ability to secure funding, compete for and secure funding. Do you need to have a grant in order to be recruited? No. But does it help if you've shown an ability to get compete for something, whether it's a best poster award, whether it's, do you have evidence of scholarship? Have you been writing reviews? Have you tried to compete for grants? Have you gotten grants at some point? These are things we're looking for. Presentation is very, very important. How do you introduce yourself through the various elements of the application? And then what is the future like? What is your research plan? And then finally, what do the people you've asked to write on your behalf, those letters of references, what do they have to say about you? So, that's going to get you a foot in the door. Foot in the door is that you're invited for an interview. Then in the interview, that we're looking for people who we think are going to be doing great science, and we think are going to be great colleagues, and we think are going to be sort of helping the departmental community be what it should be. So there are, lots of meetings, one-on-one meetings, small group meetings. We involve the students and the postdocs in these interactions. But the two key elements are the research seminar, which talks about the current work, and then the chalk talk, which talks about the future work. And we make the chalk talk session long enough that it's like a prelim exam. You are going to run out of steam. You're going to get to a point where the ATP levels are very, very low. And then how does the person behave when basically you're out of gas? Then you learn a lot about an individual. And so that's why the various elements of the visit are also critical in determining then, of the short group of people who you have the opportunity to meet, who are the people who may best take you where you want to go. So this is very general. So if there are specific questions about any of this, I'm happy to take them. But what you have to understand is that we're looking at time and training, but does that mean that a 8-year-long doctoral degree or an 8-year-long postdoctoral experience would be taken as a negative? And no, it means that if it's been longer, then why is that? And what are what's the evidence of productivity the whole journey? So it's not the number of papers, it's not where the papers are published, it's what is the biology that you've been involved with, and in what way have you been able to impact that biology? That is really the drive. And twice. I want to see this happening twice, on the account that if you've done it twice, you probably will do it again if you come to Michigan and you start your own journey. So these, for me, are the most important things. And the other thing that I look for, and I look for that when I recruit PhD students to my lab, postdocs, and also faculty to the department, have you really prepared yourself to interact with us? Do you know who you're going to be engaging? Can you tell me why you want to join my lab as a postdoc? Can you tell me why you would like to join Cell and Developmental Biology at the University of Michigan? And so if I see that you've put in the effort to understand who we are and to make an argument for how you can, not only are you a good fit, but you can help us go to where we want to be, that's when I think it's more serious. So those are some of the elements that I'm looking for.
I have a question for you. You mentioned the importance of letters of recommendation from people who know the candidate well. And I'm always puzzled by that because I find it very difficult to tell the degree to which enthusiasm reflects a desire for one's postdocs to succeed and the desire to which it's informed by accuracy and need for honesty and maintaining an honest relationship with the person who will be reading it. It's also a tribute sometimes to the skill and also, alas, to the verbosity of the letter writer. How do you sort through these to find out something that actually has information you need to hear?
Yes. I hate long letters, where it's kind of a review paper, right? So I think that the good letters are the letters where that the portion, we can read the application. If we so wish, we can read the papers. So I think that letters should be sort of appropriately succinct and about the nuts and bolts of what has been done, and then tell us really about the individual. And a lot of people know how to write letters. A lot of people know how. They don't really know it, but it's a mix. What's really important, we want to see a letter from the postdoctoral advisor. We want to see a letter from the doctoral degree advisor. There may be reasons why these letters would not be produced. And then beyond that, the third letter matters. A little bit going to your point. If the third letter is from somebody who's been distant to the trainee, cannot really say to us specifically what is it about that person, but it's going to be a summary account of the prowesses and the publications and so forth, that third letter is not very effective. And so I think it's important to show that you're able to get out of your comfort zone, you're able to reach out to other entities to make your program better, and because you've done so, you've selected an individual who can speak about who you are and why you qualify for the opportunity. So I don't know, Rich, if I'm answering your question, but I think that beyond writing letters, the letters provided by the referees, the own letter that one writes in introduction of oneself towards the position is key. Because, you can, with a good letter about yourself, you can overcome the sort of less than satisfactory letters that Dr. Miller is pointing to now. A lot of people don't know really how to write a letter of recommendations, but that's not going to necessarily be a problem for the applicant. But where you can help yourself is your own letter should be having all the right elements and not be an abstract about your research, but be sort of a narrative about who you are and why you want the position, the opportunity, and why you want the opportunity in your backyard.
So,
Can you be specific about those elements?
Say that again?
Can you be specific about what elements are good? Like in the letter about yourself, what are those things that you're looking for?
Okay, so first of all, I'm looking for a polished document. And I want that, no more a page and a half, a little bit about who the individual is as a person, what has been the journey and the accomplishments along the journey, what are the core values of the individual. Like I'm really interested about research in an academic environment. I'm interested in training. I have been, involved in this and that program and so forth. And then, where does one want to go? And most importantly, why is it that the department, the backyard, is a proper environment for the person's next steps on their journey? And if you, not that you spell it out, but if you make it, it's like it's both the professional and the personal journey, and you feel it through the words, whether, I'm looking for a holistic statement, within a short, in a way that's pleasant to read, not too technical, but precise. Yeah, so it's a feeling. And you know a lot, I know a lot about an applicant by the time I'm at the end of their introduction letter.
Okay, so you talked about the current recruitment in your own department, and you threw out a couple numbers. It was like 200 to 300 applicants, 100 of them are good, and 25 are excellent. So could you maybe talk about how those applicants ended up in those respective tiers?
Okay, so the way we operate, this is something that I've done the whole time. I've been a chair for 12 years now, and the way we do so we assemble a search committee. The search committee is made up of very strong people who may not agree. That's how I pick them. They are really good scientists. They represent different dimensions of the department. There's a balance in terms of style and other factors, and I know they are going to argue. So that's how I pick the committee. I'm part of the committee. This current search that we have is chaired by another element in the department. I'm not chairing the search. I chaired the first one, but I am a member of that committee. But I'm just one of them, So then we have a committee that is very strong and where people are going to argue. Because as you go, so let's say you have a pool of 200, 250, to pare it down to 50, 60 applications is not that hard. But to go from 60 to 15 to 20, which is the next step, that's hard. And that's why you want to have people who are going to argue, if necessary, to arrive at the right decision. And then once we have it down to about 15 to 20, at times 25, then the whole department becomes the search committee. Everybody weighs in terms of deciding from that point onward who are going to be the 6 to 8 people we might interview on site for a visit. And then we continue to work as a department to decide, okay, who are we going to go after? So it's harder to do it that way. But the outcome is more likely to be better because you're less likely to have left out an opinion or a viewpoint or an element that should be part of the decision making.
So with that, what's your sense of the viewpoints and elements that are really critical to getting into that top tier? We talked a little bit about publication and fit, but from a search perspective, does it seem to change with each different search committee and then to the department, or does it seem like there's an archetypal candidate that tends to make that final cut?
I think it's a sort of the search. So now it's the second search that we're running since I'm here. The first one was a lot broader in terms of the scope of the search. It was cell developmental biology at large. We had 250 some applications. We were very lucky in that we had a very strong and deep pool. We ended up recruiting Heemskerk and Swati at La Pelle. Great, and they are great people. This time, and so it was this time it's a little bit more narrow, but we still have between 150 and 200 applications. It's a developmental biology focused search. We have a completely different committee. Some people are the same, but it's a different. So this time we've asked people from outside the department to be on the search committee. But it's just what I want to have strong and successful people being part of the decision. I also want diverse type people being part of that decision. And basically what you're looking for across all these processes that I've been involved with, there is convergence in that people, I mean, when you see it, you know it, in terms of who is best suited for joining your community. And there's, you know, some people came in with K99s, most did not. Some people came in with Cell Science and Nature papers, many did not. There's no specific one thing or two things that we look for in combination to make the cut. That's not what we're looking for. It's the mind that we're interested in.
Just to specify one question. This is, you talk about the review process or the application. It sounds like a very actually thorough process. You're not leaving any potential good candidates, like stone unturned or anything. So the question is there any points for applicants to try to guess what's the department chair is trying to guess?
No.
Or
Be yourself.
Just
Yeah, the best strategy,
yeah.
Don't try, I think that, as you present yourselves as an applicant to various searchers, you should modulate your application to make sure that, you want to convince them that you are aware of what's the community about and so forth. But beyond that, don't change what you want to do. Your research proposal may be presented slightly differently, but the core of it should not change. You should be you. That's your best chance of being successful. Does that help?
No,
that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Be true to yourself.
That would be my guess and thinking, but it's good to hear from someone in your position to confirm that.
Right. And the other thing about this is that, we all know, I'm sure that we all know about rejection, right? And but I tell you, it gets worse. When the further you go, the worse it gets. So it's not personal. It's important that you don't take this personally. Because, okay, so this is something else that we have not talked about. When we craft an ad as part of a faculty search, we always make the ad a little bit wider than what we're actually looking for. We're leaving space for surprises because there's nothing more fun than being surprised and sort of on the spot being redirected relative to the original intent. At times you're going to go with a different plan. So you should know as an applicant that at times the entity that's recruiting really means the words that's in the ad we're looking for developmental biologists. But at times, they make it very broad, but they may have, there's all kinds of reasons why an application does not work. And it's important to know that an entity might have a very specific goal in mind, but they present it very broad on the account that they might be going differently. So you don't know. So that's why in the end, it's the best idea, the best strategy is to be yourself. No?
If I apply a department and I was rejected, and can I try next year when they open in another position? That all of my material may be already reviewed, and maybe in a short time, my potential hasn't changed too much.
Right. So, there's nothing that would prevent you from trying again. I think that one thing you might want to consider, depending on circumstances, but sort of as a general advice, I would reach out to the chair of the department and say, look, I noticed that you're having a search this year. You had a search, a year or two ago. I had applied in that search, and would you mind sort of providing some guidance in terms of, where would I stand in the current effort, given that things did not work out the previous time? I mean, it's about really advocating for yourself and sort of pushing yourself to be, to be advocating for yourself, reaching out, sort of getting guidance from others. That would be fine. Yeah. And I think people are nice in the sense that, I do get those from time to time, and I really try to be constructive and helpful to the individual, even if that includes saying, you know what, it's not going to work again. And here's our thinking, or here are considerations that are at play. Some of them may be under your control, and that's too bad, but some of them may be outside of your control. But it might be good for you to know, because then you don't interpret the so-called rejection the wrong way.
Along those same lines, a piece of advice we get a lot is to reach out to department chairs and search committees when we are applying. When that happens, how does that look when it's a successful connection? What are you sort of looking for if someone wants to say, I was applying for your department, and sending you an email out of the blue saying, hey, I'm applying. What do you want to hear from me to develop that positive connection?
No, you don't want to. So there's a difference between the question that was asked. I don't want the applicant to start asking me for advice in terms of how they should prepare their application. Because I don't want to. It's about equity, right? So what we have a process, and I'm very, very insisting on this, is that we have a grid to evaluate applicants. The grid is multidimensional, and everybody gets formally reviewed by two members of the committee. And if there is a discrepancy in the score, we then send it for a third opinion, and we discuss that. We have face-to-face meetings. But what I don't want to start guiding the way specific individuals apply, because if I do that, then if they don't do well in the pool, then well, you told me this and you told me that. So I think that you can sort of ask, like, for instance, I see from the ad that you're looking. Let's say that you would be very specific, and we're looking for neurobiologists working on synapse and blah blah blah. You might want to know whether you could say, well, I'm doing this. Do you think it fits? You could do that, but you got to be careful about not trying to get too much guidance as a newcomer to this sort of process. Trying to get the chair or the search committee chair to tell you, what the application needs to look like to be successful. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But one thing you could do and you should do is that, let's say you're a postdoc, you're about to get on the job market, you see that it's about 6 to 12 months away. You could ask the faculty of the department, you can ask the chair to facilitate it. I'm happy to do that for our postdocs, saying, okay, can you organize a mock chalk talk for me? Or can you take me through the process? What we're doing now, you can do it one-on-one, and I can be a lot more specific. If Jay, you come to me and say, this is who I am, this is where I want to go, this is the opportunity, what would be your advice? But to hold mock chalk talk sessions, it's like when you prepare for the prelim exam. It's a great idea to have a mock prelim exam session. It makes a big difference. And again, it's about reaching out, and it's about sort of, that's how you get better and more connected to the reality of what it means to have a Doctor of Philosophy degree and be successful, whether it's research oriented or anything else.
Yes, can you tell something about the score that two people are assigning for each applicant? We just mentioned about the score.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell something a little bit more if you don't mind? Like how do you score?
So what goes into the process? So we have part of the score has to do with the track record. Part of the score has to do with the letters of support. Part of the score has to do with the plan for future research. Okay, and then the remaining portion of the score, which is very, very important to me, is what I call intangibles. What makes these individuals potentially stand out? That goes beyond the papers, the area. Who do they want to be? What would they bring to the department that would make us stronger, more diverse, augment our reach, be able to sort of go about our mission in ways that I can and perhaps I cannot predict. So, so that we have this category about intangibles. But also fit factor. So those are the elements that go into the scoring.
Can I ask a follow-up? Yeah.
Sure.
Can you tell something about the fit? So if you are getting people from different skills, they may have some difficulty in fitting in your current setting. So how do you decide who's going to fit in? Like if they are different in terms of skills, thinking.
Well, there's really two big dimensions to the fit factor. At a personal level, in terms of who the person is, we don't want a fit. We'd like people who are different, unfit. Unfit in the sense that fit enough to align with the mission, but otherwise different, so that you grow. So that in terms of personal attributes, personal history and so forth. In terms of the science, you don't want to duplicate what you already have. We don't really need more skin biologists in our department. I'm there. We have Sunny Wong. We have Ange Gauche. But too close would be not comfortable. Too far would not be comfortable. In the sense that you want people to come in a community that right as they walk in, they're going to feel that they can reach out to others. They're going to build bridges from the moment they come in, right? So it's like that's what the professional sort of the scope of research fit is all about. It's different but connected potentially in ways that you can perhaps predict, but also in ways that you may not be able to predict. So some of it is a feel. So does that help?
Yeah, great, thank you.
In terms of building bridges, would it help a candidate if they want to apply to your department because that's really their field of expertise, but they've reached out to people in other departments that they can already know they can build bridges with? And if it helps their application, how should they go about disclosing this to you in their application?
Yeah. So I know we're pressed for time, but I would say there's two big elements to your question. First is that we never bring somebody without joint appointments. They come, the minute they walk in, we are working on or we've secured a joint appointment in a different community that's important to them. Okay, so that's one component. What's the other component I wanted to talk about? I forgot.
How do they disclose that in their application? How do they?
Oh yes. Thank you. Thank you for the cue. So the first visit is very departmental-centric. We are aware of these connections and we try to address them. But the first, it's about us and the candidate, And so how does that feel? The second visit, there's always a second visit now. It's all of Michigan. Here's of Michigan. It's whatever we can bring to the fore that might cause you to say, because at this point we're very interested in you, this is where I want to be. Yes?
I know the current job market doesn't work in this way, but I want to ask a reverse question that what would be a red light for a candidate? Say, if we have a choice of this department and that department, or this school and that school, what would be a red light for not joining? Like not joining, you shouldn't go in this department. From a chair's perspective, this department is not going to grow. It's better.
So this is, I'll tell you red lights.
Okay.
Like they want you to have a K99 to join. They want you to have published in those journals, or they make it clear to you that they may want to manage your business, the way you go about your research, the way you go about training your. So I think that there's a lot of red flags. You would like to join an entity where you're going to be excited to be there and you're going to be unabated in the way you want to grow. I mean, reasonably speaking. No prescription, no scripting. This is what academia is all about.
So I think just to jump back to one thing that was said as sort of a final question, you talked about this principle about being successful twice. And the reality is that many of us, through our academic training, sometimes run into situations where we have a bad mentor-mentee relationship that could inhibit our ability to be successful twice. But obviously, we don't want to be excluding people that have had bad mentor-mentee relationships and experiences from the job market. So how, as a candidate, if we've had a negative experience that maybe would look like we're not successful twice, how would we communicate that through an application?
Yeah. So that is a very good question. So I think that it's important that if you are not in a good relationship, professionally or otherwise, it's important that you be active about it and not passive. It's also important that you be sophisticated in how you relate that. But there are cases where, let's say the PhD record is average on the overall sort of, in the overall scale of the process, but then something magical happened, and then this person is basically exploding, professionally speaking. So that's perfectly fine. If it's nice to see an upward trajectory. I mean, the PhD is a time in which to learn to do science. You don't really necessarily expect to define fireworks anyway, but I think that sometimes there's not going to be a letter from that said advisor in the application. You can sort of state in your cover letter that in choosing my references, blah blah blah, and I felt it would be appropriate to not ask this person. Happy to talk about it. I mean, you just very professionally and sophisticatedly, you sort of give a reason for why an expected element is not there, and then you offer the opportunity to explain if given the opportunity. I think that's how I would do it. But I think that what would be important, what would be the kiss of death, is that if an applicant has been passive about the circumstances, that's not good. But to be under suboptimal circumstances is not the kiss of death, so long as you show that you've done something about trying to compensate, to make the experience what you needed it to be. Yeah.
Any last questions or thoughts?
Yeah. So, for the student to graduate from like a UM and she finished the postdoc at the same school, and if that will she be undervalued when she apply the faculty in the same school like that? So I heard that the North Campus, some engineering department, they don't hire the students graduate from their department.
Right. I think that different people have different opinions about this. I think that if you've done one thing and one thing only throughout your entire training, I think that I would argue that this may make you not as compelling as somebody who's done two different things or really broaden their horizons, push themselves and so forth. That may not necessitate that you change institution. So being in the same institution, it happens, and one can be successful in that way. But if you've done like very specific aspect of muscle biology as an undergrad, as a grad student, and then as a postdoc, and on top of it, you've done it at the same institution, it's not so good.
Too narrow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's thank Pierre for his time.
I hope this was helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.